What is up, Gothamites? Welcome to a brand new Gotham video. It's been a long while since I've made one. I actually do not know how long, but since a lot of you have been asking on the channel, I still thought I would dart something here and there for all of you who missed the old days. And I really feel like this video is quite a fun one because it's about Gotham Season 6. But no, don't get ahead of yourself. It's not a real Gotham Season 6, but I still feel like there's just as much fun in this video because it's about hypothetical Gotham Season 6. So, just to be very clear, this isn't meant to be a fan fiction of what Gotham Season 6 could have been, going over every possible character subplot, so I'm not going to be immaculately thorough in every avenue of what could have happened, because this video is intended to be more of a composite of a few ideas of what I would have liked to have seen, mainly related to the big bad plot and arc if the show had an opportunity to have another season, while also, of course, having to keep in mind that the following ideas assume that Season 5 wouldn't have been written in such a way that was ending the show with things like Bruce leaving Gotham towards the end. So with that in mind, and pretending that Gotham Season 5 ended in such a way that led with Bane's defeat in one way or another, and let's say that Jeremiah ended up in Arkham still, but maybe not in a coma, which would have more or less led things in such a way that would mean another season would continue the story once again. So to start with, one thing that is clear about Gotham's approach throughout all of its seasons of the show is that instead of Batman bringing about his rogues gallery, the show played an interesting twist on super traditionalist canon in where these rogues gallery members such as the Riddler, Penguin, basically Joker, Scarecrow, and others were already out there long before David Mazouz's Bruce Wayne became Batman, which inspired Bruce to eventually go off, as we know at the end of Season 5, and train and return to Gotham in that finale time jump episode to combat them and ensure the safety of his city, instead of the other way round, which is most often and most traditionally Batman still being inspired to help protect Gotham, of course, because, well, it's Gotham, but then and only then for his most popular villains to come out of the woodwork. So with Season 6, following from Gotham's status quo, if you will, of villains already establishing their origins in the city that seemed to birth them all by itself, and I've mentioned this before, and maybe some of you have heard me talk about this back in the Gotham days, and it's a direction I really would have been interested to see the show take, and that is to have seen Season 6 explore the return of Harvey Dent and the fall of Harvey Dent in the first half of Season 6, and then the rise of Two-Face in the back half. Before anyone says, oh, but you can't do Harvey Dent this early, what do you want about? You know, wasn't he meant to be, or isn't he meant to be a similar age to Bruce? Or friends with him, or just something like that? Just stop right there. Just let's not pretend that Gotham didn't do things differently on almost everything that you guys loved about the show, and for the most part, we accepted that adaptation of the source material, and as I aforementioned in this video, the villains quite literally being around before Bruce even became the Bat. So long story short there, introducing Harvey's decline into Two-Face over the course of Season 6 before Batman isn't remotely far-fetched from what we were used to seeing with Gotham, and would in fact follow suit completely with what they did each and every year. I'm sure Penguin would be grasping at power in some shape or form. The Riddler would likely and typically be in some sort of identity crisis as usual, and then only to find himself and cause more Riddler mayhem, with one way or another roping the other cast's antics into Harvey Dent's storyline in Season 6, which would have of course tied into the GCPD as well, with Jim Gordon, the main protagonist here, always mopping up the mess of the characters we knew and loved on the show. But perhaps this time round, we see Jim Gordon tackle a situation in where he really tries to nail down the Penguin for once and for all, because his ambition for power is causing much chaos to ensue in Gotham in Season 6, except now he needs the help of Harvey Dent to do so, to finally nail that coffin, like to finally close that chapter on the Penguin, which is of course now Harvey is involved, and it's the first time we've seen him since Season 2, so he's come even further in his law career. By the way, I just want to disclaim this, by all means, I'm not saying this is an airtight plot or anything like that, it's just an example and a very rough layout, so feel completely free to implement your own ideas of headcanon, if you will, down in the comments below to flesh it out even more. I would love to see your expansion on the ideas I've still got yet to say in terms of how everything goes down. But anyway, back on point. Continuing on this route, things don't quite go the way of justice that Harvey obviously would like, because, well, this is Gotham and it's corrupt, and no matter how much Harvey tries to do the right things by the book, slowly but surely along the way you see the cracks of Two-Face come out. This would echo the frustration that we saw from Harvey in season 1 and 2 when we saw his pursuit of justice, but things just kept getting in the way from time to time, and you kind of saw that pent-up anger within him. And that's just one thing I really liked when we did get to see it from when we saw Harvey Dent in Gotham season 1 and 2. Sure, we barely saw the guy overall, but it was really exciting seeing this ambition for justice that Harvey Dent had, which is true to his character in the source material, of course. The Harvey Dent who was just passionate of bringing justice against criminals, but also get a peek at that kind of rocky road to Two-Face that he would eventually fall off of at some point in the future. Ultimately, though, we never got to see Harvey Dent in Fox's Gotham again. Whether or not they ever actually planned to bring him back, we don't know. And either way, I'm pretty sure the actor who played Harvey Dent, Nicholas D'Agosto, signed on to another show after season 2, and so couldn't have really come back for a proper arc like this, even if Gotham wanted him to. Not that Gotham was even really afraid of doing things like recasting, like Firefly, but I felt like their Harvey was way too compelling to do that, and I really felt like Nicholas did a fantastic job. And when we saw those cracks of frustration and anger come out of him, oh man, to have seen a full-on like Two-Face with him would have been incredible, at least in my opinion. So, finally, getting to the more juicy stuff now. Just how could have Gotham have actually done that tragic origin moment that springs Harvey into Two-Face? Like, how could that moment of acid splashing on the face actually have gone down in Fox's Gotham? Well, I think when it would happen would of course have to have been in that mid-season finale. It would have been just such a great way to end the first half of Gotham season 6 and build up hype and anticipation for the rise of Two-Face for when season 6 would return sometime in the new year, as it always did after every season. Since, as I also mentioned at the beginning, this season would be divided into 2 chapters. The fall of Harvey Dent in the lead up to the mid-season finale, ending with that horrible disfiguring moment, rolling to that kind of Gotham intro and outro title sequence, kind of leaving the fans' jaws dropped, hopefully. And then in the back half, the rise of the crime lord boss Two-Face, who ironically enough eventually completely steals the thunder of what Penguin was trying to do in the first half of the season in his own arc. Except now a new name arises in Gotham City to contend with, funnily enough, with Penguin contributing to the creation through his own actions. I mean, just imagine the first half of the season has been Harvey and other characters such as Jim getting very close to nailing Penguin, and it all came to this pivotal moment in court where Harvey is attending a trial in a very similar way to where we even see Harvey Dent do this with the case of Carmine Falcone in the comics, when Maroni is on stand. And in the comics at the time, the worst criminal in this particular origin was indeed Carmine, and this season would be kind of heavily adapting that into live action with the way that things went down, except with Penguin in his place, due to the events, of course, of Gotham leading up to this with their own canon, being that Carmine's time has already long been over, so they're just kind of swapping it out with Penguin and how he's got a rise to power. So we're really building towards that moment now, where we've got Gordon on his side trying to bring down Penguin with the full power of the law combined, and Harvey doing his thing in court, and one of Penguin's right-hand men would also take Maroni's place in this scene you're seeing, where during the trial, Penguin had already planned for one of his lackeys to throw acid in Harvey's face to try and intimidate him enough to stop him pursuing him for once and for all. But also tragically, this is where Harvey believes he's just gonna pull the floor out from underneath Penguin and finally nail him to the board for once and for all. Except it ends with the acid being thrown in the trial, which of course scars Harvey on the left side of his face and thus disfiguring him for life and descending him into madness. And so, Gotham ends with its mid-season finale, and the second half picks up with Dent in hospital, except he isn't that same Harvey Dent anymore. Like, the first episode or two would probably explore, like, his complete disconnect from reality, because of course during a traumatic event and his days recovering in hospital, he just more or less delves into madness and became obsessive with, well, what we know Two-Face to be obsessed with, and that is the kind of dualities, the opposites, and thus he formed his own duality, if you will, of his own, the second persona of Two-Face. But of course there's still that Harvey side of him somewhere. So it would initially start with obviously him being discharged from hospital, very disgruntled, not himself, but it would unfold into such an arc into that second half where he's so obsessed and furious at the lack of injustice and corruption in Gotham that he would go on to ensure that justice is served at any costs. So not only would he want to get revenge on Penguin throughout the second course of the season, but he would go after any official who he felt was corrupt and helped sway Penguin's trial along the way, since, as I said earlier, this is Gotham, of course, and at this point it would have been revealed to Harvey and others that Penguin had a few important people in his pocket helping him avoid being incriminated. So in a similar way to the comics where Harvey, I think he tries to take out the assistant district attorney. It's like a thing like that, but obviously it's not exactly the most legal way to go about it, but it's a very Two-Face thing to do. So Two-Face tries to kill people like this, always in twos, of course, but Jim would try and always get in his way in a very predictable Jim Gordon GCPD kind of way, where he just reaches out to Harvey in certain scenes where he says, you know, this isn't the right way to go about it, let's do this by the book. Dent would go on to say by the book doesn't work, and we would also just see scenes of Two-Face wanting to kill Jim, but also having this kind of inner conflict of Harvey trying to get Jim out the way and saying, if you don't get out my way, it's very cliche almost, but it's like, you wouldn't be surprised to see it in Gotham, because they were friends, right? They were working together, but also there's this side to him that would kill Jim, but there's also the other side where there's Harvey still. So I feel like that would play an interesting dynamic. This is what I mean. This is a very vague, rough version of an outline for a season-long script, if you will. It definitely has a lot of blanks to be filled in, but I would love to see the whole struggling internal dynamic of Two-Face with, like, his friends or people like Jim, and ultimately, of course, with an amount of events that kind of take you up until the season finale. It ends with the tragic conclusion of Harvey's final iteration, Two-Face, ending up in the place he kind of once stood against most, or not necessarily, the place that he kind of would arguably have put people in, and that is Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. He doesn't go to Blackgate, no. He goes to a place for the criminally insane, and just what a fall from grace. Now, that is more or less it. I just thought this would be a fun video to explore what I would have wanted to have seen. I've wanted to see Gotham's take on Two-Face, whether it's not Penguin or whether you guys want to edit this in your own thoughts down in the comments. I feel like Harvey would have returned to help Jim with a case where Gotham would have got too much for a certain character in terms of them grasping at too much power. The person who makes the most sense to me there is Penguin. I know there's comments of, oh, there's always Penguin grasping for power, falling for power. I do get what you mean there, but I feel like Penguin is the one, no matter what, who would try to get an empire, and maybe this time Harvey tries to actually crack down, because it's like, how didn't we actually see Harvey Dent beforehand? But really, it's the real-world factors of that. The actor wasn't around anymore. You know, you guys get how it works. So, hypothetically, this is how I would have liked to have seen Gotham Season 6 go, with a big bad, or even if it wasn't Gotham Season 6, this is how I would have liked to have seen roughly, very roughly, the draft for his season-long arc. So, would you have liked to have seen Harvey Dent in Season 6? Would you have liked seeing his decline into Two-Face go like this? Or would you have liked to have seen a whole different villain? I would just love to hear your ideas down in the comments below, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I'm most certainly not trying to milk Gotham. I think you could probably tell that. I haven't made a video in months, but there's a lot of Gothamites out there who still love this show, and here's something for you guys, I guess, to keep some kind of semblance of it alive in some shape or form. So go ahead and like this video if you did enjoy it. Make sure you subscribe for more future updates like this on other Bat-centric stuff and comic book stuff. Follow me on Twitter for other updates. Join my Discord server to also talk about Gotham there. We have a whole Gotham dedicated channel, so the fandom is still very much so alive in there. And yeah, there's other places to support me, like Patreon, if you really want to help out even more. There's merch and whatnot where you can actually get things like this BobaTalks beanie. But yeah, I'm gonna call it a day now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see you Gothamites in the next video. Goodbye.